If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by Arwin, trying to get in, writing my intro to distract me. The 10th Man Rising, Adam Meakin, Neil, who else we got in there? Chocolate saying, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Yeah. Let's get it on today. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to
Just for your
can I
information,
point something out, Nathan? Like, there is a pretty big delay between the actual Google Plus here and the YouTube, just saying.
You mean the live stream? Yeah, I know. I've put it on what is called normal latency. So I want to get the best quality out of the stream. So rather than having it, to be perfectly ruthless, I don't need instant interaction with my chat, which is the only benefit to having really low latency, which is to say that the chat and the live stream are very much synced together with only a second or two between them. Whereas if there's 5, even 10 seconds between them, it's not the end of the world. I can still read the chat and read out super chats, and half the time they're coming when there's a discussion coming, and I have to rewind the chat to put it up on screen anyway. So I don't need really low latency. So hence I've gone for quality over speed, basically. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I was just checking. Like, is that normal? So
yeah,
good to know.
Oh, I mean, it's very thoroughly tested, more so that I was testing the PC, but using what I do, which is streaming and recording at the same time on OBS whilst playing a game to stress the computer. That's streaming and recording, so I can see that it's functioning. And yes, it is delayed, but that's because the stream is, I've upped the quality, so it's now 1440p 60 frames per second. This stream is, so it's a higher resolution. Since I've got the new computer, it can do it with ease now, since I've opened up the other half of the chip. Anyway, this is boring crap. We're in a live debate show. Hopefully people will join from the public.
Housekeeping.
Anyway, we haven't actually covered what the housekeeping questions will be today. We were going to prepare this in advance. That's lasted 2 days, so I'll just ask whichever ones I fancy, if you don't mind. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
Negative. Space-time funnel.
Being that gas pressure is the force that the gas exerts on the walls of a container, you kind of need that container to have the gas pressure, so that would be problematic.
The space is fake.
Well, their answer,
the vacuum of space?
their answer has always been,
I've got a solution in space-time for you, but
their
it
answer
doesn't
is
work.
always,
You can, 10th. Go ahead, and then Arwin.
It's dropped again.
Oh, it's 10th dropping. Gosh, terrifying moment. I thought my
second
computer
on
had
and got
crashed.
really
I was
bad
like, oh God, has it died? No, it hasn't. It's all good. It's just 10th. Rubbish computer. God.
Listen, the evidence is air. Air.
Like, evidence of gas pressure without a container.
Yeah, it has to work because we're here on a ball Earth with gas pressure next to it versus an outer space universe. So because that has to be reality, something has to be able to keep the gas pressure to the ball.
Perfect.
So a
Perfect.
solution
Stop.
would be
Just stop there.
space-time bending.
Stop. We'll get to that. Perfect. What Arwin just summarised was what I think 2 commenters. One was on QE's comments and one was on mine. And Arwin now. So 3 people who picked up on the reality of what that jape, humorous though it may have been, actually meant in reality. So we're talking about, what was the guy's name? Was it Jake?
Wait a second,
Josh.
I did too.
Hold on, Arwin. Hold on. Josh. When Josh said air, what Arwin just summarised was what he meant. We've got air, therefore we've got gas pressure without a container, and therefore air existing next to a vacuum. That whole begging the question fallacy presuppositional idea that Arwin just summarised was what was meant when air was the answer to how does gravity hold gas pressure next to Earth in a sky vacuum, which was what was posed to him when he responded air. And like I say, Arwin and two of the commenters picked up on that's what he actually was doing.
That's not true. I said it
I
too.
wonder if he realized
said
it.
what-
though.
I said, wasn't he doing a Brenda? I said the same thing the other day.
Okay, well, thank you from the token Muslim on the panel.
Well, some people said air, some people are full of hot air, but we both said it, yes.
But I wonder if he actually realized, though, that that is what he was doing.
No,
Because
he
that
did.
type of habit, it just goes automatically. It's like, yeah, of course, air. I mean,
Arwin,
it's like
you're
the point
Arwin's on fire.
outside, right?
Oh, I
point
love it. I love it. I love it. What a great way to end. Absolutely correct. Arwin's on fire today. So what Arwin's just summarised is whether or not... I keep meaning to call him Jake. What's his bloody name again? Wasn't Jake. What's the guy's... What was my opponent's name? Bloody hell.
Josh.
Didn't you
Josh.
say his name is
My
Josh?
bad. He was so memorable. Josh. What Josh said when he said air was what Arwin initially summarised. But Arwin's also, like I say, on fire because he may or may not have realised that that's what he was doing. But that's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. But that's also true, Arwin. Yes, he may not even realise that that's what he did because he's not educated enough in his own bloody claim to realise that's what he's doing. But were he to educate himself and try and justify his answer, that's what it would be if he didn't know, which he may well not. But yeah,
Well,
yeah, absolutely, Arwin.
Sorry, after the moment when he said that, he proceeded to kind of like blankly stare a little confused into the distance. So he probably didn't.
Probably not. But you're right on both fronts, which is epic. Right, so as
Nah,
of which
you're wrong.
I've already
That's
decided what the
right.
second question is going to be because of that. So Arwin's going to get a little bit of free rein here. Yeah, don't take too much poetic license. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Gas pressure sticking to a ball in outer space?
Yeah, that's what I was hinting at. You said that there was an explanation in bending's fourth dimensional space-time, and then you alluded to a funnel in answer to the first question, which I didn't even grace. But there we go. You go ahead.
Right. Well, there's supposedly a funnel of space-time, which in pseudo-Riemannian force space, like another dimension that is on top of ours. We can't touch it though, but it has to be there because things work the way they do. There's like a funnel, and gases, in my view, kind of seem to function like a fluid, much more like a liquid, sitting down in space-time in that funnel. And that is what in the third dimension keeps the gas to the ball. It's because in space-time curvature, it's basically sitting in a hole.
Okay.
I have one. Can you ask the question again, Nathan?
Yeah, I can either address the claim that he's made or address the more subtle Baldwin aspect of him introducing the third dimension, that's physicality, into his description of fourth dimensional bending space-time. Which should I address, I ask myself? Or neither? Do neither, let's be honest.
You don't have to. I mean, I know there's no it's resting
that's
on the
stuttering,
assumption
right? That's
of the way
stuttering.
it has to be.
Do you hear
right?
that?
I mean,
right. That stuttering
it's-
from Arwin is Arwin caught. Right. He knows that I've immediately collared what he tried to do there. So subtle. It was so subtle. I've got to take your hat off to you, Arwin. But your stammering little exercise that you've done then tells me I was correct in the sandwiching in three-dimensional reality to your explanation, right? That's the thing I'm definitely going to focus on now.
Well, since Eric Valinda
Hold on,
said
10th. Hold on, I've got him on the hook here. Go ahead, Arwin.
Now, the point is that why I made that connection with 3D reality is because, well, the whole pseudo-Riemannian force space solution was based on the assumption of the scenario that Earth is the way it is presumed to be, a ball in space with gas next to it. So the solution was found in pseudo-Riemannian force space that then points at the scenario being the way it is on Earth.
Gotcha.
That's kind of how it works
No,
internally.
I got you. No, it's very eloquent and very actually accurate in terms of what's going on here, and it's also Weasley if you slip it in the way you did. But can I just ask one question before we do address that? Right, was the other bit with funnels and that's just a shape for gravitational wells in bending force space, right? Was all that just a subterfuge so you could drop in the 3D bit?
No,
Oh,
that's it's a core mechanism of how.
No, I know. I realize
the
it's
answer is in pseudo-Riemannian force space, and the funnel, right? The well, the gravity well is the solution.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's not relevant to a heliocentric claim. I'm just saying, did you drop in that spurious bit of heliocentric truth, if you want to call it that, to sway me away from the fact that the main point that Arwin subtly dropped in was that and it's just eloquently, it's lowered my blood pressure greatly. Arwin, I love you when you're like this, right? It's just eloquently detailed how the trick works. So we've got a conceptual fourth dimensional medium that only exists in mathematics that was developed by Einstein, and it can explain how gas sticks to a ball, right? Gravitational wells or whatever, funnels, whatever, right? Yes, true, but yeah. Okay, but that's not relevant to our three-dimensional physical world that we live in. That's a description in a fourth-dimensional world that we don't live in. So to say I've used the fourth dimensional world we don't live in to explain this problem in a three-dimensional world we also don't live in, that would be a spherical one, isn't really a great explanation, but well worthy of Arwin going through it in this way. Much less stressful. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Chocolate. Actually, no, 10th, then Chocolate.
Actually, the guy in Discord, then me, then Chocolate.
Oh, who is the guy in Discord that wanted to say something? I'm really sorry.
Yeah, me.
Go ahead,
Jorge.
Yeah, the question on the table: scientific evidence for gravity, atmospheric pressure.
Just to beg in the question, fellas.
That's what I said.
Just to beg in the question, fellas. If you say atmospheric
pressure.
Yeah, it's beg in the question, fellas.
We all know without the container. We all know without the container there can be no pressure. So yeah, gravity.
Yeah, but that's inclusive of the first thing that you claimed, which was an oxymoron, sphere-shaped air. Atmosphere, yeah, that's what they'll describe their refraction in, and their gas pressure without a container in, and their gravity in. It's all taking place in sphere-shaped air. Atmo, that's air. Sphere, a shape. Their shape that they're presupposing. Well, we haven't got sphere-shaped air. That's an oxymoron. Air doesn't take the shape of a sphere arbitrarily in a sky vacuum. Far from it, it would disperse into it. It takes the shape of whatever containment it's got.
You gotta.
But if I may, look, sorry, 10th, keep it short. But technically, he is correct though, because atmosphere and gravity both exist in the ball 3D reality. So in there, that is exactly what they do. But it doesn't have to do with the actual 3D reality, though.
No, that's not strictly true. It might have been true 108 years ago. But no, that's not true. There's just an empty void in the place of an explanation for a second law of thermodynamics violation now, currently, because you can't use pseudo-Riemannian force space Einsteinian non-force gravity to hold gas pressure to a sphere Earth in a vacuum. There is no way of doing it. The best you've got is what you did, Arwin. Let's be honest. That is as good as it gets, isn't it? Saying I can explain it in 4D and then juxtapose that with 3D? Well, no. That's physical versus non-physical conceptual.
Yeah, but if it's explained really well and people understand your reasoning, then they kind of tend to lose a little bit of the track of the entire original premise of the point.
No,
so they accept.
No, perfectly reasonable. Arwin's on fire. Right, so what Arwin's saying is, once you get to the point that you don't realise there's a superimposition of 3D reality onto a conceptual fourth-dimensional bending space-time to hold gas pressure without a container in this example, then it doesn't matter, because then that exists in your mind's eye. In other words, the space is still real. It doesn't matter that it isn't. It only ever existed in your mind's eye, and so long as that's maintained, which is the entire point of the brainwashing and ridicule against flat Earth, then it's maintained. In other words, you still believe in space. Oh, right. Fourth dimensional bending reified space-time that isn't a force holds gas pressure here. All right, okay, I'll be on with my day knowing space is real. So yeah, you're right, Arwin.
Yeah, well summarized.
All right, so what he said there is atmospheric pressure, and obviously you need a container for pressure. So they said, well, it's gravity. Now they say, obviously the story has to change because gravity doesn't exist. Gravity's not a force. So now it's 4D space. So the storyline keeps changing because they need to have an open system next to gas pressure in order to get their rockets out and go travel the light years in the future away from Earth and see what they can discover. But you can't have gas pressure without containment, so there's no way of getting out because the gas would get out just like the spaceship and would all be dead. So the story crumbles.
You say we need to have an open system?
NASA?
Well, that's a little crazy. Why did my boy Bill Nye tell us we live in a closed system? That would be different.
Yeah,
An
but it's
open
to the
one.
remote in force space. It's closed.
Well,
right?
when the story changes as much as their story must, then you know it's not based on any truth or evidence. So if one of them says we're closed, the other one says, well, can you open the hatch so we get the spaceship out so we could be open for a little while? I mean, come on,
Well, like in Spaceballs.
whatever. I mean, the whole point is their story keeps changing, but gas pressure without containment is impossible. That story never changes.
Okay, well, we'll continue with a few more
That-
housekeeping
that is the-
questions tomorrow, and hopefully this pattern of doing housekeeping a couple at a time means that they're a bit more, fresh each time the show starts, and indeed we don't just drag out housekeeping for 50 minutes every show, and then have 5 to do other stuff. Anyway, we're going to carry on with this. So we've covered yesterday, this Gen Z kid thinks Earth is actually flat, and Connor Pugs, whose video I'm going to share now with the live audience. So go and check him out. Subscribe if you enjoy his content. In spite of the fact that we obviously disagree with his views and prejudice towards this flat Earth kid he's describing in his story, doesn't mean he's not a good YouTuber. In fact, quite the contrary. I very much approve of the way he has narrated this story. In fact, it takes a lot of skill. Probably a skill that I will never acquire. I couldn't do what he has done. My hat is off to you as a YouTuber. That's why you've got loads of subs. Good for you. So you might enjoy his content. Go and check him out if you want to. But his name's Connor Pugs. Anyway, we've got about halfway through yesterday covering this, and I thought it was gold in terms of not only his narration, which was great because it meant it was enough meat on the bone for us to react to without actually seeing what he's talking about, which is fine because of his skill as a YouTuber. Again, enough commendation for this guy. Check him out. But we'll go through the half now, if that's all good with everyone on the panel. And yeah, feel free to chime in. I went off on a bit of a rant because it's to do with teachers and teaching with Flat Earth in the subject, which is probably the single most thing that boiled my blood in a heartbeat. But there we go. So maybe you guys can do a bit more input this time to keep my blood pressure down, just for the sake of my own sanity. So we'll crack on from roughly halfway, and if we have covered this a little bit, it doesn't matter if there's a bit of overlap.
No, but also I don't feel like picking a fight with you over if the earth is round or flat, bro. Like, that's just not how I want to spend my, like, Friday or Saturday afternoon. I just have different things I wanted, like, I don't know. I just value my time enough that I know that, like, having that type of conversation is just not going to be productive at all.
So we did cover this yesterday, and it's ironic because in the pre-show we had Neil as an example saying, when I'm only pulling his leg, but, if you were a good Christian, you wouldn't think about thumping the bad serviceman and just restrain yourself because you are a Christian. You wouldn't have such evil thoughts, right? Well, in the same way, when this guy's saying about a heckler to a presentation that started disagreeing and debating with the kid's presentation, that the kid's views are basically acceptable. And when it's described by him, which is why I'm hesitant to say this, as the kid not wanting to have a fight with him, it's similar to the context of Neil in the pre-show. That is to say, why are you considering this quickly escalating into a fight and telling the opponent, when he's not an opponent, he's just someone making a presentation that you're debating with and heckling, that you don't want to have a fight with him? That's only according to the narrator, though. So, any other comments? I know we already covered this yesterday.
I just would ask why you would address a point and say, I know it's not going to be productive. How do you know that? Only because you know you've got your own obstruction that's going to stop it being productive.
Yeah, it's not going to be productive for me because I'm going to put a full stop to it right immediately.
Yeah.
Yes, good point.
I think yesterday you were very fair in saying, what if he wanted to do his report on Narnia, or which is a metaphor, or something else? Would the teacher in the story, as the narrator is sharing, reacted the same way. But it just happened to be about flat Earth, and it did something to the teacher in the story that we're reading or hearing. So if it was any other subject, would he have reacted the same way? Or is it just this one because he's got a religious belief in heliocentrism?
We have the answer.
And
the narrator gave us
Yeah,
the
go on.
answer to that. So, according to the narrator, the teacher was delivered a story about traveling to Hawaii, and I can't remember what the other story was delivered. And no, there was no heckling. We weren't told that the other kids were bored and looking at their phones, but we weren't told that they weren't either, you know, so we don't really know either way. But he did also mention that the kids with this specific teacher weren't paying enough attention to the point where they're having to be told off because they're Gen Z kids who are on their phones looking at TikTok because they're all evil and learning about flat Earth on it. Apart from the kid that's heckling, he's a good kid.
But the contrast is this presentation on flat Earth, everyone was attentive, it seems like, including the teacher, to disrupt his own rules of delivery is the only thing you're going to be graded on. So, as you said yesterday, this was the best, and he should have got AAA, because when you do a presentation audibly, and you can have everyone's attention, and even the teacher has to stop you because he's got cog dis, that's a great presentation.
So I'm just not gonna have it, bro. Yeah, so anyways, eventually the Gen Z kid ends his presentation, and okay, so at this point, half the class is like super confused and they just don't know how to feel about this whole thing. And then the
Again, you know, such a good presentation that everybody's thinking about how it makes them feel. Definitely not looking at their phones then.
other half of the class like bursts out into applause. Some kids literally stand up, like, you know, when something is so good, you have to stand up and give it a standing ovation. Like, some kids in the class were literally giving this kid a standard ovation, or a standing ovation, standard deviation. They're getting...
Wow. I mean, we didn't get to this part of the story, so this is the first new bit. Oh, wow. So, not only are they not looking at their phones, not only are they all engaged, 100% of them according to this guy, 50% of them are on their feet cheering him on. They're definitely not looking at his phone because they're clapping, right? So they're not holding their phones. Well, maybe they are. Maybe they're
Sounds like you hit it out of the park to me.
Yeah, exactly, Neil. This is an issue, though. It needs debating about. They didn't teach you in university how to deal with a kid doing really well at the task he's set when he challenges your religious belief. You just don't know how to cope with that when you're a new teacher.
Giving him a standard deviation, giving him a standing ovation for saying that the earth is flat, because I don't even know, bro. I think they were just also Gen Z kids.
Of course, they also fit into the stereotype. The 50% that were giving him a standing ovation, they were all Gen Z kids. The 50% that disagreed with him and heckled, they're the good children, the non-Gen Z ones.
Yeah, so, you know, the thing is, Brian...
How does that actually work in a classroom where they're all the same class age? Anybody?
Well, if you're a flat earther, then they can basically discriminate against you in whatever form they like, right? Or just like if you were pro-Trumper or something.
Gotcha. So they're all Gen Z
or
kids.
you don't, and then you can't do that. Now you're just one of the guys.
Gotcha. So what he's got is a typical, all of them are Gen Z kids. So they're all little shits. But a couple of them aren't. I don't know why, but I don't want them to be in the stereotyping fallacy because they're supporting my cause in this regard. So he's just cherry picking whichever ones he wants. Okay, fine.
The teacher is just kind of confused by this reaction because he kind of expected like laughter or like awkward silence. He did not expect a actual standing ovation from people in the audience. Like, that was definitely not one of the things he was expecting to see. So
was he not? Was he not doing... You're telling me that whilst assessing the child's presentation skills, he wasn't expecting that people would be so engaged that they would applause the presentation? That seems like something that was in the realms of possibility. Doesn't sound like a great teacher if he didn't think that maybe one of the kids will give such a good presentation that everyone around him will not only put down their phones and pay attention, they'll cheer at the end of it. That didn't cross his mind. No, but maybe whether or not his religious belief was going to be challenged did cross his mind, but whether or not the presentation was so good it got applause didn't.
I think the information nowadays is much more than it was when I was in school. When I was in school, after a certain class, I recall many times, I don't know. I don't agree with that thing
Well,
that the teacher said. And only one or two people might chime in now, because there's alternative things that kids go to learn. This one message through the school system isn't the only message they're hearing. So this whole address of Gen Z kids is really could be done in these kids nowadays in classroom have other means of getting information, not just the teacher in the classroom. So they're asking questions. And so it's a different thing than when I was at school, when it was the only information coming was the teacher.
How the hell does the narrator know that the standing ovation came not as a result of the information delivered, but a result of the high standard and quality of engagement from the presenter? In other words, they're applauding how bloody well he'd done at the task. How does he know that they were all applauding his notions about flat Earth? He doesn't, but he's assuming that's the case. Now, you notice how I'm putting it in the negative for us as flat earthers? They aren't necessarily agreeing with the kid because they applauded. They might have just really enjoyed the presentation. And they're just not brainwashed to start tutting and waving their fingers at the end of a good presentation. They don't care either way. Maybe all of the class still believe they're on a ball, but they thought it was really good, so they clapped. But it still needs taken to one side because they all clapped because they were on your side, or 50% of them were on your side with your presentation. That's a problem.
Well, I think when he said 50% had perplexed facial, that's the teacher. The teacher associates with that 50%. The other 50% were with the kid, and they were excited and they stood up. So the half the class that stayed down is like the teacher. What? Is he serious? I mean, are you kidding me?
Wait till it's whole classes that are cheering and telling the teacher how wrong they are.
Yeah, damn
Wait
right.
till that's happening.
Yeah,
Hell
damn right. Only 50%. Exactly.
So Brian was a little, taken aback by this. He's just like, oh, okay, okay. So Brian kind of speaks up and says, hey, Gen Z kid, that was a really good presentation. You will be receiving full marks for your grade because I'm grading you on how you presented. However,
Wow, my blood pressure goes down a little bit, at the very least. Given that he did absolutely without question fulfill the assignment, the kid got a good mark. Thank God.
However, I do have to ask, was that...
Sorry, what's that? However? Why is there a however? Was there something else in the task that he missed? Let's see.
the whole Earth being flat presentation.
So this isn't about the task. Why is this critique coming? Wouldn't have been a critique if it was about travelling to the centre of Earth, even though there's no evidence of a molten iron core and you can't physically do that. There's ground in the way. Yeah? So that would have been okay, moving on to the next kid. This, on the other hand, you did really well at the assignment. However, you challenged my religious faith. That's not acceptable.
Was that satirical? I mean, it was a genuine question.
Were you having a laugh? What does it matter? Did the criteria have non-satirical nature in or not? No, it didn't. Not according to this narrator, at least.
And I think the teacher was... part of him was hoping. I don't think the teacher actually believed.
So now we're on to the hopes and desires of the teacher. That's what this is really about. I'm glad you summarised it immediately. Yes, and now we're on to the nitty-gritty of what this is really about. The teacher's got a problem. That's what this is really about. He's got to suddenly assess how he thinks and feels about the content of the presentation that could have been literally anything. Go on,
but this has been from the beginning. Like from what I remember at the beginning of this yesterday, every other sentence is, well, I feel that I have this feeling. Like, it's all about his feelings. And now he seems to be divining the thoughts of the teacher. Because unless the teacher is saying all this stuff, where is he getting it from? Is he just projecting? Like, I don't get it.
It was satirical. I think the teacher was hoping that it was satirical, bro. Hoping that, like, the Gen Z kid was actually just...
Yeah, we get that too. You know what we say? When they get angry when we point out, nah, we're not joking when we absolutely annihilate the notion of being on a sphere. We're not joking about that. When they get all angry, we tell them to share their pain. Because that's what this really is. Brian assessed it beautifully yesterday. That's his pain. And what's he doing with that pain? Sharing it with the child that just did really well? That seems very unreasonable. And you're claiming this kid's gaslighting him? Seems very unreasonable. I think you should learn to deal with your pain better, narrator and teacher by third person.
Is a master comedian and was able to just...
Nathan, just
Go ahead.
is the term he's described there, satire. Is he being satirical? Okay. Is that a hope of the teacher so that I think reality is dawning that he is actually going to have to deal with this topic, though. Half of the class recognize this already. So you can see why the teacher's not. It's not just against his religious viewpoint of the world. It's now going to be contradictory. Half the class have got knowledge of information that's going to be contradictory to what's going to be taught. You can see why it's going to be a problem, because it's not just like a personal challenge. It's an authority challenge that he can probably see coming ahead in the curriculum he's about to teach. So if these kids have got this, when we get to orbits and gas pressures, they're going to have these answers because they're Gen Z kids. And as much as they're trying to place Gen Z as some kind of ad hom, they're actually the most literate with regards to information technology, finding out information than any other generation since. And that, I think, is where the Gen Z comes in. These people are self-researched. This has not come from the mainstream, this challenging bit of satire. It's come from them going out there and finding out things for themselves. So I see it as a challenge to his authority as well as within the classroom, or it's going to be.
You mean any generation that preceded them, not any generation since, right?
Sorry?
You said any generation since?
Sorry, yeah, well, they are. Sorry, that preceded, yeah, sorry.
Well, we live in a hell of a time now, right? Where now the teacher doesn't necessarily have to be the sole authority. Any of these kids could go on their phone and find a plethora of information on their own. They no longer require a teacher. That's why they're going to get nervous.
Yeah, that's why I said authority. It's not just his religious. His authority's gone right now because he was going to teach this stuff. And here's somebody that's saying no. With, I would guess, probably correctly, a very well-reasoned argument if the class give him a round of applause afterwards.
Well, he identified the debunked notion of gas pressure being attracted to Earth, as discussed earlier, in a summary by saying that it was wrong. He said Newtonian gravity is wrong. Well, that's absolutely 100% correct. So even though he's a child, or she, I don't know which, put that across, that's correct. Not only is it correct, the teacher knows it's correct. So in terms of argumentation, it might not be the case that suddenly governments are going to topple and there's a big conspiracy, which was what was alluded that the child had said, or stated as a result, and gone on to question the motivations, which is very childlike in my humble opinion. Because who cares what the motivations are? What he stated about is, if you want to call it that, it was a presentation, but nevertheless we're critiquing him on his argumentation. He said that Newton was wrong. That's it, that's correct. And the teacher damn well knows it too.
Pull off such a ridiculous presentation with a straight face, making it look like he actually believed it, when in actuality, he just actually believed that stuff, bro. Yeah, so sure enough, the Gen Z kid's like, no, like, did it sound like it was a joke?
Yeah, that's almost offensive to the child in his presentation. That's downright offensive. Go on.
Yeah. I mean, any other topic that's delivered with sincerity and so wow, that is really very, very rude. Was that a joke? He's just outlined his worldview. If anything, it's an attack on his religious beliefs. Is that right? You know what I mean?
Well, exactly. Suddenly, I envisage my child being in the same position, right? And the people, the general populace, which the narrator represents, is telling his audience that it's perfectly acceptable to have some kid on the sidelines heckle and say, no, he sits outside of my Gen Z stereotype because he's a normal kid. with his normal heckling and his normal objections to something he should be shutting up about and just listening, paying attention as he was, paying too much attention to the point where he wants to interject. But that's a normal behaviour. In other words, the persecution of, if you want to call it, as Adam just did, this kid's religious belief, if you wanted to phrase it in that manner. I don't like it phrased that way, but we will, right? Then what? The kids on the sideline that disagree with him suddenly propped up and agreed with when the teacher sat in fear that the contradictory nonsense about gravity he has been taught at university might come to a head when he's actually put it to the children and they might challenge his authority on it. Yeah, these are the concerns of fundamentalist religious zealots, not the concern of the child that's just done the presentation. Moreover, the child shouldn't have to concern himself with hecklers that disagree, because there's nothing to agree or disagree with in a presentation like this. Yeah? But that's what I would fear for my child. Suddenly all the kids around him after the class are going to be ganged up on because the teacher agreed with the detractor when it wasn't a bloody debate.
Did I hear you correct? You said the teacher said, was this a joke? He asked the kid after that presentation if it was a joke.
Exactly. When it didn't make any difference, again, like the other things I pointed out weren't relevant to the topic and how the topic was covered. All that was relevant was how well the presentation was done. It wouldn't have mattered, according to the narrator, if it had been to the centre of Earth, which you cannot do. Well, if you're going to describe going to the centre of Earth and you do it in all sincerity, you say, I'm going to do it with the drill rigs like we used in Armageddon, and I'm going to negate the heat with a really complicated air conditioning system. Now, obviously, that's nonsense fantasy. But after the presentation, if it had everybody gripped and on the edge of their seats and going, excuse me, sir, because they're not quote-unquote normal kids, they go, excuse me, would it be possible for me to ask a question of the presenter? I know it's out of sorts and it's not part of what we'd normally do here, but I'm really intrigued. Teacher says, no, we haven't got time. You might, if we've got time at the end, we might come back to something. We've got other children to look at who do a similar presentation. Hopefully they'll grip you as much as the last kid. Moving on, distinction for him. No, that's not what's going to happen here, though, is it? Far from it.
I thought Adam's comment was based on the teacher's religious belief that he had a problem with, not the kids.
No, I was struggling to quantify it, but I don't disagree with Nathan's objection. Poorly worded. But it is fundamentally a worldview. So to ridicule it as opposed to address it, and I see, I think it's fear. Half the class know this. This teacher's in a spot. Please let it be ridicule. Please be you're being satirical. Otherwise, these are things I'm going to have to deal with. Half my class clearly know more about it. They've applauded him. This is the reality of what this description of these presentations. This is the reality in the classrooms. Is half the kids know about flat Earth, and they're prepared now to talk. Imagine being a kid, Nate. If I go back to school, if you had something on a teacher, yeah, oh, you'd milk it. Our teacher looked like Michael Barrymore, so we just do, little jokes here and there. If you actually had a piece of information like gas pressure without a container in the heliocentric model, you would be taking your teachers apart with fun. Do you know what I mean?
You're right on it, Adam. You're right on it.
So that, like, it, you really see the picture of what's going on. Sorry for my phone ringing. Because this whole, it's just so convenient that this whole thing shut down at a time when Flat Earth was surging. So while this shutdown happened and everybody was, occupied with that, a lot of rhetoric and a lot of mental control befell the people, because the internet taught you, well, now you can't say whatever you want because we're just going to take your content down, we're going to take your channel or your group, or we're just going to block your account and stop you from being social with and for some generations, like, the internet is the only way to be social with all your friends. So it's like, if you're disrupting in the, because I remember my stepson talking about how like half the class was debating gravity when it came up, and it's like if the school system was put in place in 902 by you know who, early 1900s by you know who, specifically for a specific kind of individual to live a specific kind of lifestyle over a number of years and get benefits for his hard work and his time or all of that stuff. You can't have that system being screwed with in the people that are training you to be members of this society if they don't respect that trainer. That can't happen.
Right. But
So
because heliocentrism is not
that's my
recognized
speculation.
as a religion, and in some ways it's superimposed onto the reality of the Earth being a naturally flat plane, you end up with a situation where if it was put into a different context, so the kid had made a presentation on Shiva being the one true God, and at the end of the presentation the teacher turned around to him and said, "Are you joking? That was a joke, right? You are just taking the piss, right?" How on earth would that be in any way acceptable to a modern society that accepts religious faith? I'm not suggesting that flat Earth's a religious faith. Quite the contrary, I'm saying it's true about heliocentrism. That's the religion. Well, the point is that for any other faith, as opposed to heliocentrism, where you worship the sky god Helios, the sun, yeah, and think you move around it, that's your religion. Well, you're entitled to your belief. But for someone to come along and say, no, we don't move around the sun, Shiva or Ganesh is the one true God. You know, we don't move around the sun, we move around Ganesh. And they genuinely put that forth as their presentation just because they had a good knowledge on it, because they were taught it by their parents for whatever reason. Their religion in that country happened to be one that worshipped Ganesh. Right? Well, as a principle, the very fact that the teacher can turn around at the end and think it's reasonable to ask the kid if they're serious is just so unreasonable, I feel. You know, and that's because of the one world religion that we have. That's heliocentrism.
Yeah, but if it was any other subject, it would be considered okay because it would be like it would be considered like a critical thinking project, right? So bringing new ideas to the class, and that's okay because it's not this particular subject where we've all been indoctrinated and brainwashed and we have to accept it. It would be a completely different story.
And no, it did not sound like it was a joke, besides the fact that what he was saying was ridiculous. Like, he presented it.
So even though it didn't sound like it was a joke, the question was raised because to you it was ridiculous. So Ganesh, ridiculous. Therefore, ask the kid if it's a joke, even though it was clearly obvious that he'd researched it and knew what he was talking about, because it was his faith. But you still, in spite of it not seeming like it was a joke, asked if it was a joke, just to insult the kid.
It as if it was just like, oh, him presenting facts about ancient Egypt, right? When in reality, he was presenting
Facts about ancient Egypt? That's a good one. I wonder how much primary source research Connor Pugs has done on ancient Egypt. I digress.
facts, massive.
Did somebody just chuckle? Who was that from Discord chuckling? Nobody's going to own up.
Quotations about how the Earth is actually flat, which is just...
I wasn't going to tell you off, by the way. I was just going to say, well, you're chuckling at my remark about ancient Egypt, but nobody's taken responsibility for that. Fine.
Not the...
Oh, got a super chat. Thank you very much indeed to What Shape is the World, who has joined as a member. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate it.
Same thing. Yeah, so anyways, Brian is like, all right, well, I kind of feel obligated to set the record straight here. Guys, just so you know, there's no good evidence that the Earth is flat, and in fact, all the evidence points, you know, to the contrary. And he looks at the Gen Z kid like, I'm just saying.
Well, was that it? So that sounds like what we would describe as a hand wave dismissal followed by a baseless assertion. Am I correct in that identification?
Exactly.
So hand wave dismissal. Nah, there's no evidence that proves Earth's flat. Because you've researched it and debunked all of the claims that are in existence about the Earth being flat or celestial navigation's been... You haven't done any of that. It's called a hand wave dismissal. And then you've made
How
a basis
about the-
assertion. All of the evidence points
dicks it.
towards it being a sphere, as evidenced by nothing. He just looks at the Gen Z kid after his hand wave dismissal and baseless assertion. Go ahead.
How about dealing with the Newtonian thing?
Fallacy.
Sorry, Chocolate.
Yeah, I never used that term, so I wanted to use it because it's kind of cool. Baseless
I was-
assertion fallacy. Ipsy Dixit.
I was just gonna say, how about he deals with the Newtonian debunking? Why didn't he step into that?
Good point. I
He
forgot
just
about that.
hand waved everything away.
Yeah, that'll get my blood boiling if I focus on that too much, Neil. Yeah, the teacher knows damn well that one of the points made and raised by the child, specifically detailed by this narrator, is correct. There is no Newtonian gravity. It was superseded 108 years ago by Einsteinian fourth-dimensional space-time bending, something that he will have been taught in university. Something he contradictorily, if that's the word, will be teaching to the children. That's 108-year out-of-date rhetoric about gravity being a force when it isn't. The child raised that. So in spite of that, the child was told there's no evidence. Oh, what about the evidence that was actually raised if this is now going to turn into a debate, which it clearly is? They've hand-waved a point in the presentation that's not a debate, and then looked at the kid, what, for a response to your debate that you've entered in with this child?
Saying this guy, I feel like I need to, your grade's still going to be good, even though I disagree with you about like the content, you'll get full points for, you know, your presentation, which I think is fair, especially since the presentation's not based on like the information presented. Like, for all you know.
Yeah, it was. Specifically, not allowed to be non sequitur. Has to be researched. Wasn't allowed to be put together in the toilet before the class. So I think you should pay a bit more attention to your own bloody words, mate, as you were the one who detailed specifically what the actual task was. Dick.
No, Lil Johnny's presentation about his trip to Hawaii might be completely false. Like, maybe he never went to Hawaii. Maybe he went to Antarctica and ate his grandmother and he just doesn't want to say that. So instead he makes up a fake trip to Hawaii. Like, there's no way to verify that information. So grading it just not based on the information would make no sense. And especially since...
So it's not relevant at all. So you've confirmed every word we've said, which is to say that this discussion most certainly, and even by the standards of the teacher, should not be taking place.
Not the principal, the teacher said, hey, guys, like, it's just on how you present it. So, but the teacher's like, look, guys, I need you to know that the Earth is actually not flat.
The teacher needs them to know this. Why? Why does the teacher need them to know this? It wasn't in the syllabus. It wasn't part of the assignment. So that it's just the teacher's own desire to force his faith onto the children unnecessarily. That's what it actually is. Let's be clear. I'm going to say this again. I didn't say it with enough vigour last time. This is specifically why I don't put my kids in the hands of bastards like this, who decides that he's going to superimpose his religious faith onto my child after they've done really well and enter into a debate encouraging others to basically bully them afterwards. That's what's happening here. Yeah, I don't want my kids subject to that shit. This teacher, scumbag, wanker, how dare you? Move on to the next kid and give him a distinction. Don't feel that you have to address something that contravenes your religious faith in a ball earth. You didn't have to do that. It wasn't on the syllabus. It wasn't part of the assignment. Just you fulfilling your desire with someone else's child. Yeah, you shouldn't be doing that.
Flat and the gravity is real.
Really? Gravity's real? What? The way it was taught in that very class by that very teacher when he was taught something completely contradictory in university? Au contraire. If only you had a vague notion of this subject, Connor Pugs. Because then, like me, you would understand that the teachers are lying shit when he decided to challenge him on the very thing he knew he was correct about in this case. Bending pseudo-force space-time dimensions, that's gravity, currently, as opposed to the force the very same teacher will lie to the children about, and is about to offer up a rebuttal to a non-debate with that lie. Yeah, that teacher's scum. No two ways about it now.
Yep.
And that's when the Gen Z kid's like, well, I strongly disagree, and I have a lot of people who agree with me on that.
He said it in the presentation, Newtonian gravity specifically. Incorrect, not true. Out of date by 108 years, superseded by fourth dimensional space-time. So he's reiterating the point he was right about, and the teacher damn well knows it, because he was taught it by an educator at university to be in this position. So is the teacher going to double down on his fucking lie? Let's see.
This. And almost like in unison, almost like this was planned. I don't know how this would be planned, but almost as if this was planned. All these kids stand up and all say in unison, like, we agree that the earth is flat. I don't know if they all said it in unison like that, but they basically all said, we agree with him. Yeah, he's right. The earth.
Yeah, I'd have been annoyed. Even though it was a presentation and not a debate. Yes, on the one hand, you can look at that and go, oh, wow, it's great to see all the other kids support. Yeah, okay, they were going to give that anyway by the sounds of things. But ultimately, this is the crescendo of this discussion now turned into debate, formerly a presentation. Because the teacher knows he's wrong, and he's just lied to the kid at this point. Fortunately, his ass has been saved by his opponent's side, that's the kid's side, even though it's not a bloody debate, because they've all stood up and cheered. At the point where the teacher said, nah, you're wrong about this gravity, it's real. What? Real? What's real about a bending concept in mathematics? There's nothing physical about it at all. Zero is real about gravity. It's a conceptual medium being bent, fourth dimensional. Definitely not real. So at this point, the teacher's had to lie to overcome his fear and his loss of power with a bunch of children and superimpose his religion onto them. It's a disgrace. It's disgusting.
Earth is actually
But
flat.
earlier, Nate, I was thinking, I said, maybe half the kids know about it. But thinking about it, they're not. They smelt the weakness in the teacher and they're trolling him. They will now be flat earthers because they see the reaction in the teacher. Yeah.
Oh, good point. Good point. Yeah,
That's a good point.
Kids are good at trolling, especially when it's teachable to them.
As soon as you said it, even today, my 3-year-old's got a swimming teacher that likes her. So does she do well in that class? Oh, God, no. No, she does whatever she wants to do. And it doesn't matter if the teacher tells her off, because he's never going to tell her off in a way that she gives a crap about, because she knows damn well she's got him wrapped around her finger. So she does what she likes in the swimming class. And he came up to me afterwards and told me, yeah, I'm going to have to take her out of the pool again when she's naughty. I'm like, didn't work last time. What do you want? Yeah, I have to deal with that all day. Yeah, because they can sniff weakness. How do you think they are when they're 10 or 11? Yeah, they're 10 times worse. Then they get like me. Then they become adults and they can hear it in the quiver in their voices. The kids aren't as dumb as they look.
Rebellious nature that kids have. And that's why it's going to be problematic in this current time that we're in, where all these kids are running around with a phone and Google and all types of stuff that they can look up their own information and challenge the person who's supposed to be in authority in the classroom.
Yeah,
When I was a kid and I asked, how's water sticking to the outside of a wall, I was just told, well, that's what it is. And
we said this a
that's
couple of
where I
years
had to
ago.
stay.
There was a tipping point. It was a couple of years ago. It was probably around the time of the Black Swan, actually, that we said, that's it. The floodgates have broken. It's not a question of, will this catch on? When everyone is wishfully thinking that the flat earth thing is going to die. It's the crappiest conspiracy. Yeah, wake up and smell the coffee. You've been telling me that the subject's dying for 7 or 8 years. That's not a subject that's dying. And meanwhile, we're now covering the fact that half a classroom of kids agree with the presentation on flat earth to the point where it's the only thing that's actually engaged the kids all day by the basis of this narration, because they're all looking at the bloody phones, not paying attention to this crap teacher. Yeah, who's a liar. So based on that, I'm going to say, yeah, the floodgates broke a couple of years ago, and now there's no going back from it. You know, the cat's out of the bag and it isn't going back in again. Maybe it was released a little bit to keep the ridicule up, and it got a bit out of control a bit quick to the point that Congress had to get involved. But it was already too late. Now, we already knew that. We said it 2 years ago. Go and have a listen. Floodgates broke. That's it. The levee's smashed, and that's it. The water's coming in whether you like it or not. Earth's flat.
Well, glad just caught up. I've been saying it for the longest.
Got about 5 minutes left on the live show, so we'll do a little bit more on Connor Pugs. I will just share his link again, because I do want to encourage other people who make adverts about me in the negative to do the same. You know, there's no point in me moaning about it. I mean, I do this anyway, and everyone who watches the show knows damn well that I always share the links to the people who cover. But, you know, I'm going to point out the fact that I am actually sharing this guy's link.
Basically all this nonsense. Real quick, if you made it this far into the video, comment Earth down below. Earth will be the secret word of the day, so go in the comment section and comment Earth. And also, while you're in the comment section, make sure to check out the pinned comment on the video, as there are 2 links in the pinned comment. The first link is to my Spotify page, in which I upload all these stories as podcasts, and it actually helps me out if you listen on there as well. So if you like that platform, I have podcasts on there. And also a link to my second channel, which I tell stories from Reddit. And recently, there's been an editor, so the stories are actually, the videos are a lot better. So make sure.
So he's done it for me. There you go. I even let it play out in full. So there's his own plug for his own show, right on time. I didn't know that was going to happen, just appropriate timing. So as the link to his YouTube channel is going up, I'm sure you can pick up all of those things from his information box, which you can find by going to his video. Go on, Chocolate.
He tells stories for Reddit.
So they got a whole bunch of well, they got a couple of key people that you know are in the comment section to, you know, kind of dissuade people from taking it legitimately. Then those people who don't take it legitimately, they might, you know, in a critical video say, "Oh, thank you, I appreciate this. I didn't understand what was going on with these flat earthers. Thank you for helping me out." Blah 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 blah. One day, this guy or Matthew Learns or whoever it is, they're gonna post a video trying to critique flat earth, and these kids are gonna troll them to death online. It's happening on TikTok.
Yeah,
So,
Eli, this ain't the only classroom that this is happening in. This is happening in classrooms all over the place.
Yep.
Make sure to check out that channel and please go support it, as it is smaller and your support helps out even more. Let's get back to the story. So anyways, yeah, Brian is a little bit like, okay, bro, like, what do I do here? Like, legitimately, what do I do here? I just don't even know what to do. So
I think we got that.
So all the kids are standing up in unison, like, we believe the earth is actually flat, like, your information is wrong. And Brian's like, guys, like, why? And they're all like, well, we follow these accounts on TikTok, and these TikTok accounts are telling us that actually the earth is flat, and then...
Okay, all they're delivering to him is the source information. He's the one challenging it when it's not relevant. It should really be an onus that he has to fulfill. It's on him. Let's be honest. If he's going to say, I just feel it's necessary to correct you, so correct him. Don't ask him to give more information when he's already fulfilled the task. Oh, you want to know more? All right, well, we'll tell you our source is TikTok. Not actually a source. It's like a conduit for the information provided by the people on TikTok. But there we go.
And another thing, real quick, it's like, if you think about it, TikTok is in a really precarious situation because on one hand, they can start censoring people like YouTube attempted or is attempting or did or whatever. But if they do that to children that they just gained as an audience, that's going to rub them the wrong way. They cannot censor these children. They're going to have to figure something else out.
Right, they're even more fickle than I in that regard. As quick as they've picked up on TikTok, they'll dump it in a heartbeat if they feel that they're being wronged in some way and they can get what they want somewhere else. Yeah, kids are very fickle. With that, though, I'm going to say we will continue covering Connor Pugs in the after show. So if you are watching on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who tuned in, smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. Another massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on an after show. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!